Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football and the 2023 NFL schedule that was just released last week. Seahawks found out a while ago who they were going to play during the 2023 season. Now we find out where those games are in the schedule, week in, week out. And so we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the games, the teams, what they did in the draft. Maybe they added a key free agent to find out exactly how interesting these games are going to be. Not necessarily paying attention to win-loss records that we come out with at the end of this show, or what our predictions are, but you guys will get a pretty good idea how we feel. So welcome in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting. The schedule release used to be a bigger deal, simply because you didn't know who the opponents were. You did, but kind of. They formalized everything. Okay, it's been a while now. I'm old. But they formalized everything, so you know what every team but two is, and that they're going to play, years in advance. And those two are determined. So the day the season ends, you know who those other two are going to be. And so there's really not a lot of, they got to play Cleveland this year. They haven't played Cleveland in forever. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen. No, we knew that was going to happen. But it comes down to, you look at that and you just, it comes to when there's still some excitement though, because you want to know, what weekend can I buy tickets to go watch and especially if you live in not Seattle and you're going to go to a road game, like, someone I know that lives in Arizona,
and wait till the very end
wants,
of the season for that one.
Yeah. And wants to, go get and get tickets. Like, okay, it's January, figure it out.
Yeah.
So now
and your back-to-back card games and your Monday night, Sunday night games, Thursday night. You kind of want to find out if you've got any primetime games, all that kind of stuff. You're right though. We already know who the opponents are going to be. It's just a matter of where they fall in what order, and we know that now. So the interesting thing about me is we open up with a division opponent. I can't remember the last time that we opened up with a division opponent, Keith. In our schedule, you might remember off the top of your head. I can't, but this year it's the Los Angeles Rams versus Los Angeles at home at Lumen Field.
Of all the weeks to get the Rams, that's not a good one. They're going to be healthy still, even though they're one of the least deep teams in the NFL. Aaron Donald's going to be healthy. Matthew Stafford's going to be healthy. That's going to be a tough game. You play them in a month, and they won't be as strong. They're an old team. They're not a deep team.
Mm-hmm.
Playing them week one is a challenge that is unfortunate. Hopefully the Seahawks can pull that out. They played Denver in week one last year, and that seemed to work out okay, even though Denver was expected to be really good. The Rams are not expected to be really good.
Let's be honest, Keith. Yeah. The Rams are expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And so this game really doesn't scare me too much. I get it. It's the first game. Everyone's going to be healthy, but it is what it is. We play them again later on in the year. They'll give them a chance to not be healthy, and we'll go beat them again. I think we're going to beat them at home. They've had a couple of additions. They drafted one of your favorite players in the draft on the offensive line side of the ball. It's Steve Avila. With their 36th pick overall in the draft. Byron Young, the linebacker, edge rusher guy, I think is a good pick for them. You mentioned in our prior show that we recorded, and we were talking about quarterbacks and so forth. They're the team that ended up drafting Stetson Bennett as a backup quarterback in the fourth round at 128 overall.
I'm surprised he got drafted.
You mentioned the idea that he wasn't too accurate. That was actually one of his positives. as far as attributes, that he was kind of an accurate guy, but he's older. He's really small. He's a tiny guy at
He's
like 5'8",
tiny.
5'9",
He's
186
tiny. He's
pounds.
older. He doesn't have a big arm. He wasn't
No,
really a pro prospect. I'm surprised he got drafted. There's a
I am
lot
too.
of guys I would have taken before him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Other than that, their draft was nondescript.
yeah.
And then, in free agency, I don't even know who they got.
It was for them. It was mostly losing guys.
Yeah, it was mostly losing guys, right?
Bobby Wagner's gone. Ashawn Robinson's gone. Um, Patrick Ramsey is gone. No, it's Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback. Other than Aaron Donald, their best players all kind of moved on.
Yeah. And that's
It's
why I don't, that they're a highly inexperienced roster. They've
mhm.
got a lot of rookies. They're gonna fill out their depth chart and play a lot of minutes for them. And yeah, they're not going to be very good.
No.
So
They're going to be one of the teams that's probably drafted in the top 5 and going to have a shot at one of these next quarterbacks, like
I agree. So
Drake May.
the next team, though, to me elicits a lot more excitement, only because last year when we played them, it was an exciting game and we scored a ton of points. The question is, how many
45.
points are going to be scored in this next game? It's at Detroit again in week 2. They had a great draft. They drafted Jamar Gibbs at 12 overall. Jack Campbell is a player that we really liked at linebacker. Sam Laporta, a really solid defensive tight end, Brian Branch, the safety, very diverse kind of safety. But Jack Campbell and Brian Branch are the exact kind of players that Dan Campbell, their coach, loves to have on their team. And then they drafted Hendon Hooker with the 68th pick overall in the draft. I thought was a good value, considering at some point they're going to have to transition from Jared Goff. He seems like the perfect sort of player to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. He's a guy that is 25. He's not going to probably not play this year because he won't have any training camp or off-season program because of that knee injury. Will be ready to go sometime mid-season as far as being healthy, but he won't have practiced ever as an NFL player. So
Yeah.
he probably won't play this year. When he's 25, that means he'll be, or I think he turns 26 during this season, which means he'll go in with essentially his rookie season in his year 27 season. So, and that was always the rub on him, other than the injury, which was bad, but also his age, because his tape is nice. But yeah, I mean, if they're looking to move away from a guy with a $36 million a year contract to someone on a rookie deal, they could do that in a couple of years and end up with a guy that's at worst comparable, because I still don't think Jared Goff's a great quarterback, and have a lot more cap room to actually make
Yeah.
that defense not be bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did okay this last year. They had some cap and they went out and got some guys on their
They
defensive
did.
side. Alex Anzalone was weak side linebacker. Emmanuel Mosley at corner. Cameron Sutton at the other corner. CJ Gardner Johnson as well on the offensive side. Let's see, Marvin Jones Jr., the wide receiver. A couple other guys as well. David Montgomery to be their backup running back behind Jamar Gibbs. Craig Reynolds as well. Mohammed Abraham as well in the draft. So
Why do
I
you
thought
why do you think they traded Swift, the running back?
Well, I mean, he was out there a little bit as far as his comments in public, and maybe Dan Campbell was sending a message.
Yeah, I mean,
protect the team, keep it inside, all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
Swift
rule one.
was not that player.
But Swift was a big part of their offense, and I know they drafted Gibbs, which meant that
Kind of a wash. Yeah.
that job is taken, and so he was tradable, but he was a huge part of that offense. And
I think that they got better though. I mean, here's a team that's definitely ascending. We both agree on that.
Oh yeah,
now,
and
the question is,
they've got a great coach,
and they were on the precipice of being a playoff team and all that kind of stuff. I think that they're there now, and
they knocked
this will be a
Aaron
good
Rodgers
test.
and the Packers out of the playoffs with that Week 17 win.
Yeah,
For that, the rest of the country will forever be grateful to the Detroit Lions.
Amen. And I think that the question is, in week 2, when the Seahawks take them on at Detroit, that's going to be a big game for both teams. Detroit is going to want to nail a playoff team in that game, and an ascending team, and it'll be a pretty evenly matched team, at least on offense, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be a fun game. It won't be as high scoring simply because I think both defenses will be better than they were last year, but the offenses of both those teams are pretty stacked. That'll be fun.
To say the
The
least.
next week, on the other hand, is not that same thing, because the next week they face Carolina at home, and if the Seahawks aren't, at least like 7-point favorites, and 7 is a lot in the NFL for a betting line. That's huge.
And
But
you may face starter quarterback Bryce Young. That'd be a Seahawks chance to
yeah,
see him for the first time.
yeah, and you know how rookies do early in their rookie season. It's ugly. That's not a good football team. And I mean, Bryce Young um, is a nice player. I think he's going to be good. But what's around him? I
Yeah.
really just don't like that roster.
Yeah.
They're going to be picking, in the top 10 again. So, and they need the talent. So,
Yeah, their defense is not good, and their
no.
offense is okay. It's that, but a lot rides on Bryce Young, and like you said, it's a rough outing. At least the first 6 or 8 weeks, we'll find out if he's going to be ready. But that'll be very interesting. One of the other fun players that I really liked in the draft is Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver. So I'm going to be anxious to kind of see him in play. The week 4 matchup at New York Giants. That's a little disappointing for me because I'm in New York. The week prior to that, I hadn't let you know that,
man.
but I just missed that game. I didn't know
That
where it was
would've
going to
been-
fall on the schedule. I was hoping for week 3. It's in week 4, first week of October.
You can't extend your stay by a few days.
I
and go see
know,
the
and
game,
I'm not even going to be there until like the 27th. But I'm leaving before that other weekend. I think I'm leaving on the Tuesday or Wednesday prior to that weekend. So I'd have to extend it for like 4 or 5 days. That'd be kind of crazy.
That's hard to do in New York. It's expensive there.
So everyone
Giants,
expects the Giants to be good this year. Tell me why they're not going to be good.
Because they spent $40 million on a mediocre quarterback. How good are they going to be? Do you really think that roster is going to be significantly better?
Talking about Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
They already had Daniel Jones.
You're right. They already had Daniel Jones.
They weren't horrible then, but they didn't get any better at the quarterback position. They stayed the same.
In order to stay the same, they had to spend a ton of money.
I thought that was weird.
On quarter, I was shocked.
What are you going to do, though? I mean, that's today's NFL. What are you going to do? That's kind of one of those no man's land spots where you got a quarterback that's top 15, maybe.
No,
that's generous. Okay, that's generous.
20.
But what are your alternatives? Do you go out and get a journeyman? They already had Tyrod Taylor on the roster. Otherwise, you might have a playoff team. You might have a team that's kind of close. Well, they're going to be 8 to 9 wins. So when you're at 8 to 9 wins, Keith, as a franchise, you got to make a decision. Are we going to go with the quarterback we know and an ascending, in their minds, ascending younger guy that still has room to grow? Or are we just going to go play this carousel of like journeyman quarterbacks that come in until we get a chance to draft one?
I don't think they're an 8 to 9 win team. I just don't. I don't think the roster is as good as you'd think it is. I think they are a 7-win team. And if they don't pay Daniel Jones and they run out someone like Tyrod Taylor or whatever, they become a 4 or 5-win team.
I don't think so. I happen to think they're a little better than that. I think Brian DeBall is a coach that gives them essentially a floor. I think of like 7 wins. I just think he's a real good coach. He is a good coach,
and I'm not going to say he's not. He's a great coach. But that entire offense was one running back who has a long history of injuries and managed to stay healthy for 1 year. And that was their entire offense last year. Mm-hmm. I don't bet that they're gonna they will take a step back to offensively simply because injury luck will bite them. History shows that they are going to have a hard time keeping the running back healthy, and it's what else do they have? I don't like their offensive roster. I think they take a step back offensively, and they end up with Daniel Jones at 7 wins, without him at 5. That puts you in the top 5 in the draft. That gives you a shot at Drake May, one of the elite quarterbacks. Caleb Williams probably is going to go number 1 overall, but we'll see how the season plays out for in college. But puts him in shot for one of those guys, and that's what they should have done instead of paying $40 million on a year on a guy that's a nobody, because you were like,
That's tough. That's
you're
rough.
scared. You have to just be like, he is not worth that. Signing him to that's going to hurt our team because we can't get out from underneath that contract, and we can't pay other guys enough to have a roster that's good enough to win with him. Cut
Yeah.
bait. You got to let him go. And it sucks to
That's
say
tough.
that.
And I'm sure that conversation was had in that building.
Yeah. And, the Maras, I'm sure, were like, nope, we're going to pay him, because if he gives us a shot at the playoffs, we have to take that. We're not going to go into a season telling our fans we're tanking.
I think they came away, and Darble, they made a calculated decision that if we can surround him with better players and a good defense that's going to give him more opportunities to have the ball, he could actually get us there. And that's the calculation. I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but when you spend $40 million on a player per year, that's the calculation. And we'll find out if they're right. That's week 5. Week 6, Cincinnati Bengals. I love this game. Right now, I would say, Seattle
That was
loses
week
this
4.
game.
That was week 4. Week 5 is the bye.
Oh, that's right. Week 5 is the bye.
I hate having the bye that early. Ideally, you want the bye somewhere between week 8 and week 13. Anywhere outside of that range hurts, because
that's about as early as it comes in the NFL, right? Week 5.
Yeah. I think there's some teams that will have it week 4, but it's the second earliest. And that means they have to play 13 games without a bye. And that's brutal.
That is brutal. All right. I'm sure we'll talk more about that and the timing of that, but week 6 at Cincinnati, Keith. This is a crazy thing. I mean, I think we could probably have a winning record coming out of that bye, but heading into Cincinnati, this is going to be a real test.
Yeah. Coming out of a bye, the coaches will have had an extra week to extra plan and have a cool game plan and all of that. That's a tough game against a really good team that is just getting better.
Yeah. No, I know. Right. And they had a nice draft. Miles Murphy in the first round, DJ Turner, a cornerback in the second round, Jordan Battle, the safety I really liked in the draft, Charlie Jones, one of our favorite wide receivers that came in for a private visit for the Seahawks. He was also a pick. Chase Brown, the running back. So they did some improvement, and they turned their attention over to the offense a little bit, but they really helped their defense. It's a roster that's competitive for the Super Bowl, with a quarterback that can get them there, and Joe Burrow. They underperformed last year. They made it to the Super Bowl the year prior. They underperformed a little bit last year. They're going to be roaring to come back, and so this game should be the test of the year for the Seahawks at this point. And kind of a fun thing. I don't have an expectation on wins or losses yet. I said early, I think it's a loss. I just coming out of a bye that early in the season, you haven't really had a chance to really build momentum and hold on to it. And it seems like it's just a complete restart that the Seahawks are going to have to do in that game.
And then, after that, they play what will probably be the number 1 overall pick next year in the Arizona Cardinals.
At home.
That we don't even need to go through everything that happened with them. That's just a bad team.
This team's definitely at a crossroads. I mean, they're going to be bad. Kyler Murray's not going to be available to them. They're going to throw out Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune, their guy they picked up in the draft.
I'm surprised they drafted Clayton Tune. I really expected this to be let's tank for a year. We know these good quarterbacks are coming out. Let's go grab one of them. we'll move on from Kyler Murray next offseason when his
Yeah, I
contract is
think
a
it
little
was
more
more of
palatable to get
a
rid of.
we want to move on from Colt McCoy type of signing. They don't. I just
They want something
Clayton Tune.
besides Colt McCoy. Yeah,
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Nobody's going to rival Kyler Murray as far as talent, but from what I've heard, and I've heard a couple inside things living
Well,
here
and
in the Valley.
you are there in Phoenix, so
I'm here, and I heard somebody from the team in a discussion that I had, and I don't want to reveal who it is, but it was a coach that's on the team, and privately they indicated that they are not pleased at that
oh,
position.
and they shouldn't be. On the field, before last year, I think they looked at we have an elite guy because he's just athletic. He's electric. It's like watching a young Russell Wilson. Last year was a step back for him in terms of efficiency and running the offense. And then he got hurt, and there's been all the drama off the field. And I think they are just done.
Yeah, I think they are done, and they don't know how to get out of it. They've got a new regime. They got a new coach that's not married to him. They've got a new general manager that's not married to Kyler. Kyler's going to have to come back and work hard and fight and mature. And I don't believe that they believe that he is.
No,
and
he won't.
So that's a tough spot for them to be in, really, because they want to move on. The contract dictates they can't move on. You're right, though, on the strategy as far as tanking. I think that is the strategy. They'll never say it out loud, but obviously, and a team is going to go down. They're going to go down pretty hard when they're in this spot, and they are in the realm of possibility of having the number 1 overall draft pick.
And you look at what they did, like in free
draft.
agency. They didn't add like they should have to bolster that roster. They continued to lose. And to me, that said, they are prepping to unload that Kyler Murray contract, which is going to hurt their salary cap. But they're prepping to do it. And once it's done, they'll have a good rookie quarterback next year, and they'll be ready to start building forward.
Yeah, I thought they did have a good draft. I'll hand them that. I thought the new general manager did the
honestly,
right things.
They won this draft, and I know that like that. The fact that they traded down, got the guy they would have drafted anyway, and got a first-round pick that's probably going to be a top 5 pick next year.
And they'll have room to maneuver when they really need it. Yeah.
They very much could have 2 top 5 picks next year with them and Houston.
Yeah.
And they still got the best offensive tackle in the draft, the guy that everyone said they were targeting.
Yeah, Paris Johnson Jr. Yep.
Yeah. So I thought they knocked that out of the park. That was great for them.
Yeah, and they picked up a nice edge rusher, a cornerback in the second or third round. Michael Wilson, the wide receiver, John Gaines, who we talked about, the interior offensive lineman. They're going to play him at center. I've heard Clayton Tune has a chance to make this roster over Colt McCoy, only because they are tanking. So I think they'd rather develop the younger player. From what I understand, Owen Papo, one of the linebackers that we talked about frequently. Dante Stills at defensive tackle was kind of a priority, free agent type guy for them. It's the way that you build. They've got a new general manager. General manager wants to build with, in the right way. So he's going to start now. He's not going to wait. But the other part of the roster, you're right, is unmanageable. And, guys like DeAndre Hopkins want out. They don't want anything to do with this situation. It's going to be a rough couple of years for them, but we'll see if they turned it around with the general manager hire that they have. And Jonathan Gannon, a nice defensive minded coach from the Philadelphia Eagles, is going to want to instill his program and his attitude onto this team. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Hopefully he's got that chance.
Yep. So let's pick up the speed here a little bit. After Arizona comes Cleveland, which honestly, I don't know what to expect from Cleveland. I think
good roster.
It's a good roster.
But we say that every year.
We do. They finally, last year they had Deshaun Watson, but they didn't have Deshaun Watson with the suspension and all the off-season, off-field crap that was going on. Now all of that's kind of gone away. and they are he is just focusing on football, which hasn't been the case for like what 4 years now, 3 years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous guy, top 5 quarterback before all of this craziness happened.
Mm-hmm.
Can he return to that level? If he returns to that level, Cleveland is a force. If he doesn't return to that level, Cleveland is still Cleveland, and that's the issue. And we won't know. We won't know if he can ever get back to where he was, and if he does, um, that'll be a tough game. That'll be a tough team.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's a good team. It's stacked on both sides of the ball. Yeah, they have an opportunity to win the division.
mhm.
But Cincinnati's going to be tough. Pittsburgh's coming back.
I
Um,
can't imagine. I Cincinnati, that division is Cincinnati's until someone takes it from
that's
them.
true.
The
That's
rest
true.
of that division is good, but not great. Cincinnati is great.
So things are getting hot and heavy at this point. The Seahawks could, be as good as 6-1 in my book, or 5-2, or they could be really struggling. I think they're going to end up having a winning record at this point. They face the Baltimore Ravens at Baltimore. Um, Baltimore's going to be interesting. They just paid their quarterback, obviously,
Mhm.
and Lamar Jackson is healthy, if healthy. He's a challenge for anybody. They signed Odell Beckham Jr. Zay Flowers in the draft, Keith. Um,
They finally got Jackson some weapons, which
yeah,
is what they've been missing. He has been their entire offense, running the ball. Um, they haven't had good, receivers and stuff for him. They've really just put it on Jackson and said, "Here, go win us games." This year they gave him some weapons. That offense is going to be good. I question whether the defense is going to hold up their end of the bargain. It's Baltimore. It's that coaching staff. It's that front office. They've invested into the defense, but they're kind of in that 1 year where they are making some transitions, and they need things to go their way for the defense to stay where it was. Um, and we'll
yeah,
see.
yeah. Interesting. I agree. I think that Seattle and Baltimore are actually fairly evenly matched. Um, and we'll see where they're at.
Hmm.
Washington Commanders next, week 10, at home. Um, Cody Barton, signed by Washington Commanders. He comes back into town. Emmanuel Forbes is the corner, very undersized guy. Jartavius Martin at safety. Ricky Stromberg, I think, is an
Okay,
underrated center.
let's go back. Let's go back to the cornerback.
Yeah,
Um, he weighs 165
I
pounds.
know. Isn't that nuts? That's nuts to
Why?
me
How do you draft a guy in the top half of the first round who weighs 165 pounds?
because he has the ball skills that are almost uniquely him in this draft. That's why. Just strictly
Chris,
ball skills.
Christian Gonzalez was still on the board, who is an elite prospect at the same position, who has none of the 165-pound concerns.
That's
And you
true.
draft a guy that's 165. That was
I wouldn't do
probably
it
the
personally, but
dumbest pick in the entire first round.
yeah,
This
I
is
think they
straight up.
bombed on that grade for sure.
They bombed most of their draft. I really did not like their draft.
Yeah, well, they got Braden Daniels, interior offensive lineman, probably end up being a guard. KJ Henry is a kind of an undersized edge. Chris Rodriguez, I think I liked at running back, a big physical back.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then they still got Terry McLaren and Jahan Dotson and Samuel Curtis at running back. They've got Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, now Chris Rodriguez. Um, Sam Howell, though, is their quarterback. They've put it all
That's
on Sam
true.
Howell. Jacoby Briskett's their backup. Jake Fromm, everyone remembers that fiasco too. Sam Howell, though, dude, I don't know
Sam,
how they came out of the offseason with Sam Howell as their primary guy, but they did. Um,
so they're going to be bad.
they're going to be bad. Yeah, I think that, to me, this is like a 6-win team. This is like a
Yeah.
5-6 win team. They've got a pretty decent roster, but their quarterback's going to hold them back. And so it's
Yep.
just one of those deals. All right.
After
Week
that is the
11.
Rams. We already talked about the Rams. That's week
Yep.
11.
Yep.
That's on the road. And by that point, the team that's old and not deep will be struggling.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And then it's Thanksgiving, Keith.
Then we get to a 4-game stretch, which is the hardest 4-game stretch of the season. It's one of the harder 4-game stretches you're going to see any team have to deal with this season. this is the litmus test for Seattle. You go 2-2 against these next 4 games, you have you're legit and you have a chance to go deep into the playoffs. You don't go 2-2 and you're not a legit contender.
Yeah.
You're even if your record looks good, if you go 1-3 over these 4 games, you're a pretender.
So we all remember the last time we played the San Francisco 49ers on Thanksgiving. It was in San Francisco. We won that game. Richard Sherman and um
And Russell Wilson
and
were just
Russell Wilson
eating the
eating
turkey legs and
turkey
they're at
at
midfield.
on the logo. I would have been so pissed if I was a Seahawk fan and that happened in my stadium.
They were
This
pissed.
team, I guarantee you, there's somebody still affiliated with that team that's on this current team that's going to want revenge for that game, and I guarantee that's going to be on posters and so forth in the locker room, reminding them of what they need to do and want to do. This will be a great test. This is a team that everyone expects to be on top of the division.
Mm-hmm.
Likely will end up being close. They've got to figure it out at quarterback, but the rest of their roster is stacked. If Seattle can find a way to beat them at home, and we've got a winning record, at this point in the season, this could really be a launching point for the Seahawks.
Yeah, that is a critical game, week 12, at home versus San Francisco. San Francisco, that roster did not take a step back. Even though you think anytime you establish a great roster like that, that's just good top to bottom, you tend to have it for a year, and then you're losing guys because other teams are able to poach players off of you. I don't think that roster took a step back.
And they got Javon Hargrave in the middle of that defense that was already amazing.
Yeah, they're gonna be elite. That's a tough task. And I know we're still questioning quarterback, but they've won the last few years with Jimmy Garoppolo and then Brock Purdy as their quarterback. They don't need an elite quarterback to win. With that system,
that's why they signed Sam Darnold.
Yeah. And so I think that's a tough team. That's a tough game. But if you can win that, especially the home version of that, because they play again, there's 1 week in the middle. They play again. They play San Francisco 2 times in 3 weeks. They play week 12 and week 14. You pull one of those out, you're showing that you're with them, and you have a chance to to hang with the team, which is clearly the best in the division, maybe the second best in the NFC still.
Yeah. Well, and then you right after that, you go up against the Dallas Cowboys, the second best team in the NFC East, but possibly a top 5 team in the NFC overall.
Yeah. It's not the Eagles,
and then
but it's
San
still
Francisco
rough.
Again. And that's tough. And they had a decent draft.
What's interesting there is you play Thursday on Thanksgiving against San Francisco, and then you turn around and play Thursday again the following week against Dallas. So you're going to be a full 7 days rest, and the Cowboys, I think, are also going to be on 7 days rest, even though it's a Thursday game. And then you get the mini bye before the week 14 game at San Francisco. So it's just a weird setup, but you get 2 Thursdays in a row. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but it's an interesting way to have it set up.
Yeah, I would think, Seattle may end up losing that 49er game. It may end up losing this Dallas game. But I think if they do that, they come back and they beat the 49ers in week 14. It's at San Francisco. That doesn't seem to matter in this relationship they have together. Seattle's been winning down there, so we'll find out. And then week 15 against the Tennessee Titans. This is a game that...
No, Philadelphia. Week 15 is Philadelphia.
No, I have them at Tennessee, and then Philadelphia is 16.
I'm looking at ESPN right here, and it's got Philadelphia on 15 and Tennessee 16.
Okay. I've got that reversed.
Interesting. That's what that game, the 49ers, Dallas, 49ers, Eagles. 4 playoff teams. Let me look.
I've got the schedule right in front of me here. Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. So you're looking at four games in a row. 4 elite playoff teams, probably 4 games against top 5 NFC talents. And trying to do that, so late in the season, you haven't had a bye in a while, you're banged up. That is a stretch. And like I said earlier, you go 2-2 in that stretch and you're legit. Don't go 2-2 in that over that stretch and you're a pretender, not a contender, even no matter what your record says.
Yeah.
That's rough.
And that's a deal too, where Seattle's got to take care of its business against teams it's expected to win. So teams like
beat
the
the
Cardinals,
Rams.
the Browns, the Ravens, the Commanders, the Rams. You've got to take care of those games. So if you're going to drop a game, you got to drop, a 49er game or a Cowboy game or an Eagles game.
And if you're going to win, if you're going to steal the division, you got to take at least one of these 49er games. You can't go 0-2 against the 49ers and end up with a better record at the end of the year.
I think if they do that, Keith, I think they go 5-1 in the division.
If they go 2-0 against
if they go 1-1 against the
1-1 against the 49ers. Yeah, because the Rams and Arizona are not going to be good.
Right.
I mean, that's 4 wins.
But that makes the 49ers probably going to go 5-1 as well.
Yeah. So you have these two teams that are 5-1.
Yeah.
So after the Eagles,
crazy.
The Eagles are still the best team in the NFC.
And I think they got better in the offseason. They got better in the offseason. They got a great draft. Probably the best draft, I think.
Yeah. They lost some talent in free agency. But if you can keep Jalen Carter's head on straight, who they drafted 9th overall, you got the best player in the draft. Just period.
Agreed.
And the speed of Nolan Smith at 30 is insane. This is that defense, which was great last year, could actually be better. Now they got younger, and so they are more inexperienced. There's a lot more unknown than they had last year, but
there's a gap.
There's talent.
There's a gap in the NFC between them and the second best team, I think.
It's the Eagles and it's everybody else.
Yeah. And so they had a little bit of room.
Yeah.
But I don't think to grow. And by this time of the season, it probably doesn't matter at this point in the season. All right, Tennessee Titans. I think we should win this game.
They should be playing a rookie quarterback by then. I can't imagine that they're not playing Will Levis by week 16. I would be surprised, barring injury or something, if Tannehill is still starting.
Interesting.
For this team. I think Tennessee comes to town with an offense that was built around Derrick Henry, who couldn't stay healthy last year. The beating is starting to take a toll. The offense is sputtering, and they've turned the keys over to Will Levis to get him some reps. And Seattle should be able to win that week 16.
Cool. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers at home. That'll be. I mean, I think Seattle's going to win, but you just never know.
You never know. Pittsburgh's such a well-coached team.
Yeah.
But
Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, but the coaching staff will have them ready. You don't steal one from the Steelers. They're just well coached, and they seem to continue to. They always have a winning record every year, and even when their roster is like kind of crap because they're in that rebuilding session, which says a lot about the coaches. But
I really like their first 4 picks actually.
Yeah, and the picks, and then they had a good draft. So
Broderick Jones, offensive tackle, Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton, and Darnell Washington, the tight end, the oversized tight end from Georgia. Those were their top 4 picks. I love all those picks. They're going to have an impact on the roster this year.
Those are such Pittsburgh picks.
Yeah, right.
They really are.
Well, Joey Porter, right?
Yeah. That their team, they have a shot, to be pretty good.
But they're in a tough division.
They're in a tough division, and Kenny Pickett, I'm not sold. Prove me wrong, kid. I'm not sold.
And then the team that I'll probably end up going to the game, even though it's going to be a piss poor game, I think, is at Arizona Cardinals in week 18, January. I think this year it's 6th or 7th or something like that, which always seems weird to me. But that's it. So, for me, I think I put out a tweet last week, looking at the roster, kind of looking at the schedule. And I said, there's a way for this team to get to 12 wins.
There really is.
Which is interesting. Yeah, but you've got to win every game you're expected to win, and then you've got to split that stretch that you talked about.
So you look at the start, right? Rams, Detroit, Carolina, New York. Those are 4 winnable games. You better start 3-1.
Yeah.
Those are 4 winnable games. And then you look at the end with Arizona, Pittsburgh, Tennessee as your last 3. Those are 3 winnable games at the end.
Yeah.
And
So your games that you're really kind of squishy on is maybe Cincinnati, maybe Cleveland, maybe Baltimore, but then
and then that 4-game stretch.
Yeah, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the 49ers, right, and the Eagles.
The Eagles.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cool. I
So
think
one of there was one other interesting thing about the schedule that I found is that when I was looking this up and I went to the I'm on ESPN, they have links to get tickets. And you can go down the list and without looking at the games, just look at the ticket prices. You know which games are home games because those are the most expensive games, with the exception of the Eagles. The Eagles game, if you want tickets to the Eagles game, that's the most expensive game. Where as far as if you wanted to go buy a ticket right now, every other game that's over $100 per ticket per seat is a home game. The road games are all cheaper than Seattle's home games.
Yeah, interesting.
I just find that fascinating. That just shows you that the 12 show up.
Yeah,
they show up big.
Yeah,
even on a team that may or may not be good this year. It's hard to get tickets. It's expensive.
So as we do every year in September, right before the season, we'll have our what will now be our 7th annual regular season prediction show, and we'll kind of compare our first takes here with how we feel about the season after preseason and after we've had a chance to go through the entire roster. Over the course of the next several weeks, we are going to spend time with each position group on the Seahawks, strengths, weaknesses. I think we're going to start out with the quarterback position group in this next show. And so that'll be a fascinating run as we get closer to, now we're in the kind of the doldrums of the offseason. Not a lot of news coming out of the team, but we'll keep you informed every week as much as possible. And we'll go into depth on individual players, on the position groups, maybe the coaching staff. We'll have a question and answer show. We usually do that around the 4th of July. And then we'll hit the home stretch right before we get to training camp. And we'll take you all the way through training camp and all the way through the regular season. So hang with us and make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can follow Keith on Twitter at MyersNFL. You can follow me at NW Seahawk. The show at Seahawks Playbook Podcast can be found on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. And lots of subscribers there. Come and join the fun and leave your comments, leave your review of the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. That would be great as well. So until next time, Keith, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.